100%. All right, we are recording. Thank you all for joining us at Zoom at 8. My name is Julianne Peterson. I'm with Old Capital Lending. And as you know, we have closed 5,700 loans, and we look forward to looking at any opportunities that you might be able to share with us and put a deal together. Today, I'm your host, and I'm excited we've been spending a little bit of time already here, the last 10 minutes chatting with each other. So I'm going to, spend about the next 3 to 5 minutes just checking in with all of you. And then I want to push it over to Mark. I know that we get some late arrivals, so I don't want them to miss anything. But I'm going to check in with you. Now, Hutch, you haven't said anything today while you've been on the phone, number one. Number two, you are really working hard to get your brand out there. I see you everywhere.
That is good. So I learned this from Dan Hanford. He said people, they can't like or trust you if they don't know you. So that's one of the things Heath and I have been doing, is trying to ensure that people know who we are and post content that identify with those of good character, which I think we are, right? So yes, definitely get a brand out there. Thanks to Yona Weiss, by the way. He's been very instrumental in ensuring that we are constant in connecting with people. So that's
those 10-day challenges or something.
That's amazing. Yeah, I started 30 yesterday. Actually, on the 1st. Yeah, that was yesterday.
So what did you have to do?
So all it is make some posts, some meaningful posts, and the intent is to get, well, the past one was 18 likes and 18 comments, and then once you get those, you post it to another feed. So the intent is to get you to interact with different folks, because your posts also count as one of those 18. So you get 9 people to comment on your post. You comment back on 9 people's posts, kind of answer questions. You're adding value. We're not selling anything. It's all about real estate content, or just the sector that you're in content.
Yeah,
so it's great.
I see you.
One of the main is to manipulate the LinkedIn algorithm, so you can draw in people who wouldn't normally see your post just from the activity and the commenting and just the interaction. So it's kind of like a hack per se for LinkedIn. Yeah,
it definitely is.
I participated in quite a few of them, but well, you have to. The only thing I would say with that approach is, when the challenge is over, if you have a premium account, you know this, that once there's a drop off on your activity, LinkedIn actually penalizes you for that, because then they see that as some form of manipulation with their algorithm. So then they start to monitor your account from a negative standpoint. So you want to kind of jump in and out of those 10-day kind of things. I wouldn't, consistently participate in it from that standpoint, because it is a hack, and eventually those loopholes are going to be, shoveled, or you're going to get penalized from it, especially if you have a premium account.
Yeah,
just
so
a cautionary tale for you.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So I don't have a premium account. So I started a 30-day challenge. I really want to continue it, because we'll be getting a lot of good feedback. The network have been growing. I have a lot of people reaching out to us. Also, they see the way that Heath and we comment on each other's posts. Always ensure that my main post or his main post, his post has my name in there, my post has his name in there somewhere. Putting us together. So
I'm still getting notifications from posts that I was added to that you posted like a month ago. I'm still getting people liking those posts. I'm like, man, that's got some legs on some of those posts.
Sir.
Sure.
Yeah. All right, you guys. Great. Now, is anybody working on something that you need input or help, or a market that you're looking at that needs some support? Jay, I have a meeting tomorrow with a broker in Michigan. So once I have that meeting, I'll push him over if I think that's a good deal for you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Hey, Jay.
We're in Michigan.
How's it going?
Hey, Michelle, I haven't seen you in a while.
I'm not sure. Where are you, Michelle?
I'm Detroit metro area.
Okay. Are you safe? You're safe over there right now
Yep.
with COVID?
Yep. We've quarantined ourselves. Yep. We're actually just starting to get back into the swing of things.
Okay, good, good, good. All right, well, you guys, I think it's great timing because while we're all on COVID, we're meeting new friends, we're looking at our business, we're looking at training on new items, we're looking into education. And so obviously my interest is to provide value and options for you when you go to learn new, markets, whether you're looking in Michigan or Arizona, but to really identify that market that you want to go into and use the tools that are out there. So last week we had Yardi Matrix. This week we have Real Pages. And by the way, on Thursday, if you didn't see my post, we are doing a Marcus and Millichap and Old Capital webinar, another great opportunity to hear an amazing syndicator who has 13,000 units, since 2003, ended up making a portfolio of $2.5 billion. And why am I bringing that up now? Because our buddy from Real Pages, Greg Willett, who's a mastermind of looking at the data and analyzing it back to us, he's going to be joining us, as well as the CoStar guy from the Texas area. So I want to make sure that I get that out there. Did anybody watch my video?
Yeah.
Okay, good. At least it made sense that I did that. So, okay, cool. So then what I want to do is
signed up, but I didn't watch the video.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
Nate, you don't have to, but it took me about an hour. I over and over and over. So that's how it goes. So I do want to make sure that we have enough time because I think that the information that is going to be shared tonight is super valuable. So I want to tell you a little bit about Mark Ferruda. He's a senior advisor with RealPage, and it is a publicly traded organization focused on providing information and operational solutions in the multifamily industry. RealPage is market analytics in the industry's only lease transaction-driven data platform to help investors and syndicators like yourself make better investment decisions for themselves and their clients. That is huge, you guys. That is showing your value. You use these tools, they make you look smart. So Mark, my goodness, has a very long history in both investment data sales with both RealPage and with CoStar. And before that, he was in corporate sales and worked as a commercial real estate investment brokerage with Marcus and Millichap. And so anyway, he looks at, he's done it all, okay? So he knows what he's talking about. He lives in California like me. And I'm not sure if you like that, Mark, or not, but he's in Northern California. I'm in San Diego. He lives there with his wife and 3 children. So I want to turn it over to you, Mark. If you would take us through your information, and if there's any questions, go ahead and either post them in the chat box or feel free to interrupt. Either one. We'll take your questions. So Mark, over to you. Thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me. Thanks for the introduction as well. And I think we have 11 or 12 here tonight. So it's a small enough group. If I'm going through something and you guys have a question, feel free to stop me and ask me. I don't, won't bother me at all, and be happy to slow down or focus a little bit more on an area in our data platform itself. If you see something of interest that you guys would like to dig into a bit more. Sounds like you actually, I didn't realize Greg was coming next week. So you have the heavy.
Well, no, actually, he's going to be speaking on Thursday on a webinar with our company. So
very nice. So I definitely highly encourage you guys to attend the Thursday session as well, because which is actually helpful, because I'll cover more of our platform and our data itself today. But Greg is actually our chief economist for RealPage. So he's the one that goes out and speaks at the NMHC and all the top events in the industry for multifamily on behalf of RealPage to talk about our data, interpretation of our information, and really what our information is telling us as far as a forward look for the economy. So I'll give you a little bit of background about RealPage itself. As Julianne has mentioned, I have a long history in data sales, and before I was in data sales, I was more on the side of using the information that we're going to look at for business purposes. In the past, it was brokerage. I still look at the information I have today from an investment perspective too, because kind of like everybody on the phone, probably you guys think in light of the current struggles of the economy, there's also potential areas for opportunity and opportunity that may not have existed in the strong market we have been in, and you know, maybe cap rates will soften and things like that. So RealPage as a company is a tool specifically focused on the multifamily industry. So if you think of you know, an organization like IBM or Google having like a ton of different solutions that they can go and sell to the business world, RealPage is like that for the multifamily industry, meaning today we're going to take a peek into our market research data. So market research data in terms of information in order to help you make better investment decisions when you guys are out there analyzing a deal, because I'm sure you guys spend a lot of time trying to find a deal. The next step past that, of course, is to make sure that you don't lose your tail and you're making the right investment decision, both on behalf of your own capital, if you're putting your own capital at play, or that of your investors. So really tools to manage risk, maybe also tools to help provide additional collateral from a outside independent third-party company, you know, $5 billion market cap company that just does market research so that you can have an additional opinion or validation of a market that you might think is worthwhile putting yours and your client's investment money into. So RealPage, you know, over the long term can be a company that services all things multifamily related, meaning we have about 80 to 100 different products. Most of them you won't care about until you guys build your portfolio and need specific solutions to handle different aspects of ownership and management of multifamily buildings. So think of things from screening a resident or marketing to potential residents that are going to come and live in one of your buildings, or being able to take online leasing payments or deposit insurance, or solutions to handle accounting or just general books and records and things like that. So RealPage has a ton of different business lines. The point of me mentioning it is, past that, all of this also creates information. So I think if you guys look at any broker package that you guys have in your email box right now, it's probably made up of a rent roll and then probably a survey of rents around those properties that the broker is trying to convince you that are relevant to the subject property in that brokerage package. So your job past that as an investor is typically to try and figure out maybe whether that pro forma is real, whether those rents are really achievable or not, whether that submarket is an area that is worth spending more time on. And really, as an industry, there's not a lot of transparency in the past, meaning you're really just relying on surveyed rent information. You don't really have an insight into transaction data. It's almost like if you're going to go out and list your house, you're going to rely on sales comps for the house to go out and price it. But if you're going to go out and lease your house, you're probably looking at other lease comps that are out there, what other neighbors might be offering their property for lease. But really what the value would be to know really what someone signed that lease at. So RealPage has that type of information for the multifamily industry. So transaction level data that is provided from our other product sets that we have. So think of accounting tools. RealPage has the main tools in the industry that help set price. So I'm sure everyone in the room's booked a hotel and booked a flight before, and you notice prices might change from if I search for it on Monday versus Friday. The same type of software is available in the multifamily industry, and RealPage owns the two main tools that control pricing for the multifamily industry. And because we have those tools, that also allows us to have insight into where rents are transacting, renewals are occurring, our it allows a different level of insight into the market so that you can obviously make better decisions, more accurate decisions when you are out there trying to chase a deal. In addition, before you buy a deal, you probably want to get an understanding for that market and really future rent growth, right? You're not just buying it for today, but you're buying it for the next few years, or if you're planning on repositioning it, you want to be able to reposition it and hopefully achieve higher rents so you can increase the cash flow and either have equity and sell it again, refinance it, or go buy more deals. So we have really accurate and detailed market, sub-market, and asset level forecasts. So if you use that from an investment perspective, you might use that to validate potential rent growth for an area. So if you think rent's going to grow strongest in, let's say, the Scottsdale submarket of Phoenix, then you might focus on there, and you might have additional data or collateral to go and show an investor, potential investor, and get them comfortable when you're out raising the money in order to do so. So really what we're here to talk to about today is our market analytics platform. So that's our market research platform. And we have millions of units that we track in the space, and we have two levels in which you can access it. You can look at it from a big picture perspective. We call it a macro market perspective, meaning I'm going to first pick a market, maybe pick a sub-market in which I'm going to go and focus on, or I can focus down on an individual property, maybe a specific asset within an area, and evaluate that to see if I'm going to put together a package and make a run at it with my group of investors. So the goal of this is all, at the end of the day, to help you have information that really allows you to make better decisions, because I think at the end of the day, everybody can come to their own conclusions, but really what our data and what I get calls from, and I talk to all sorts of groups really throughout the day, big groups, small groups, I had a group similar like this last week for a company called BlackRock. We had like 45 people on the call.
Is it just me, or is Mark frozen?
I lost
I lost his audio.
That's me.
Okay, so let's wait for him to show back up. Is he still here?
Take over. It's fine. Just kidding.
Let's see. Looks like he's lost.
Yeah,
He'll
it's
come back
have
in.
black.
Yeah, we're gonna have this recording, Julie.
Yes, we are.
Okay,
Yeah.
sweet.
So there he is. Is he back in? No. So just so you guys know, Ray brought us this information, said, hey, I think you guys should look at Real Pages. So he introduced me to Mark. So great job, Ray. We really appreciate that. Any input is helpful. If you guys want me to bring in somebody, I'm happy to do that. Okay? Just email me. I'm happy to look into whoever that is that would be helpful to other people.
Absolutely. No, I definitely thought it was useful to me. And then as I looked around, a lot of the comments that I was seeing on Slack, I felt like this was probably a good thing. So thanks for putting it together. I just came up with a little idea. You did the rest.
Well, it always gets a little help from a friend. So, well, hopefully he's going to come back in. Anybody interested in Oklahoma City? Anybody looking at Oklahoma City? Little Rock? Oh my goodness. We all got, oh no, there we are. Oklahoma City, Little Rock. Anybody? There we are.
I'm back. Hey.
Perfect. Okay.
Sorry, guys. Home internet problems.
Tell them to turn the Disney off.
Yeah, here, let's see. All right, so before this is the platform itself, and what I'm not sure where I was at when I cut off, but I was going to go into a particular market. I picked Phoenix because that's one that has come up on quite a few calls with other investment groups I've been working on. But if there is a specific market or area that maybe you guys would find more interesting or relevant, I'll open it up. You know, let me know, and I'd be happy to go into that in particular as well, and we can tailor this conversation around a specific deal. I was going to go into Phoenix, unless you guys have any comments or would like to see something different.
Pensacola or Jacksonville sounds good.
Pensacola or Jacksonville. Okay, we can go to Florida. I know Ray's on the phone as well. Are you from? Are most of the callers from Florida?
No, we've got New Jersey, LA,
Detroit.
Michigan, Florida, Illinois, Shaka. Where are you, Shaka?
So
I can't
those are two markets that I'm looking at. Is anyone
Okay.
investing in Arizona? Because if there's somebody in the Phoenix market, that might be more directly
We can
related.
go to Jacksonville, or I've heard Orlando and Jacksonville. Although I've heard Orlando might. Yeah,
I've been underwriting constantly in Tucson, but not in Phoenix. Still too hot.
Okay.
You know, I would like to hear your sense, Mark, of what you're finding in the tertiary markets. Can you just talk about that? Because I think when we hear Patrick saying Tucson, you know, it's because people are sick and tired or looking for opportunities where Phoenix is too expensive. So what's your thought on that?
I mean, I think there's been a general market sentiment or thought, you know, forefront of thought, you know, being in Northern California and, you know, the Bay Area, San Francisco in particular, which is a highly dense, highly, extremely expensive market. And then I have heard a lot of thought about, you know, people flighting from the urban cores and higher price rent areas and moving out towards more tertiary markets. So yes, maybe like a Tucson to a Phoenix, or, you know, other areas outside the core metro. So that's not something uncommon, and I think it definitely warrants a look. I've also heard that, you know, obviously when people go into a market which is recessionary or a changing market, a lot of times the you know, the idea is looking for where distress might lie first, and that's obviously we see it in C and A, C first, and then A, and then we think B is most insulated. So you know, for those that are waiting for maybe a more distressed asset situation, you know, the Class C assets are ones that we feel that are obviously going to feel a bit more hurt in the shorter term here through COVID over the next, I'd say 10 months. And then A, Class A properties would follow that. And then B, we think will be more stable throughout the.
Oh dear. So did he say he's in the Bay Area? Yeah, that's a very frequent problem. I'm constantly zooming out of the Bay Area, and they drop in and out on a regular basis because of the bandwidth issues they're having from people working from home.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well,
yeah. It hits me in LA, but not as much as the Bay Area.
okay. Let's see if he'll come back in. Darn. Okay. So let's shift. Let me see. Is he back in? There we go. Okay. I'm looking to see how I can help you guys. If there's, like, Jay is looking in Michigan. Is there anybody that needs my help with a broker or a property manager? Oh, there he is, saving the day.
The kids turn off turn off the TV.
Yeah.
So apologize. This usually doesn't happen even when they're on this. But yes, I have seen those talk tracks come up, and that's actually probably, you know, for transparency, by the way, too, that's definitely a question that Greg would be able to answer a lot more eloquently than I, because he's used to doing presentations on interpretation of the data itself. You know, my role at RealPage is more so working with groups of investors or potential investors and lenders, and you name it, as far as getting a comfort level for our tool set of information products so that they can potentially leverage them to help them do their jobs better. But to answer your question, yes, I think now is a potential opportunity in some of the tertiary markets and even maybe core markets too. Class C properties within might be more attainable than before. Let's see, larger ones. So I'm going to come into our information platform here. So RealPage has tons of researchers. I'm maybe more client facing and front facing, but we have a large staff of people that basically go out and do all the grunt work in terms of gathering information on property rents, leasing, and things like that, renewal information that typically people would have to go out and manually gather themselves. And RealPage just happens to be able to do it at scale. So we have a platform, a user interface platform, which you guys are looking at here, that allows users to do market research at a faster clip. So meaning you guys don't make money by doing market research and calling rent comps or anything like that. You guys probably make money after you buy an asset. You don't make any money unless you buy an asset, and that asset's going to cash flow and your assumption's right and it's the right deal. So market analytics is a tool that takes a step outside of an education, which you guys are doing now. You guys are on an educational call about maybe how to grow your network and how to maybe raise investor funds better or more efficiently and finance them. This tool is a tool strictly to be the fuel to what you guys are doing, so that when you guys have a deal, you can act quickly. You can make a good decision based on accurate information, and you can make sure that when you buy it, you can sleep well at night because you based your decision on the best information that you can go out and acquire. So you're going to use it at a completely different perspective than what a broker on the other side of the table that you guys are going to network all the time with would, to go out and get a listing and sell an asset. Our data is primarily to help you guys make good decisions. So let's go ahead and let's look at Jacksonville, and let's take this under the scenario of should we put some money at play in here, and what part of Jacksonville might we want to do so in. So to do that, I would start from the trends area of my platform here. So you can look at a property level information at a market macro level, or I can come into a individual building, and we'll start large to small. So I'm going to click here, and we're going to come into Jacksonville. So this is us taking a big picture look at, let's say we think Jacksonville is a good market to invest in. Maybe we should figure out, what areas within Jacksonville we might want to focus on. So within here, I can put in a market, or you can pull up information by submarkets. It really just depends on how you want to see information. So I'm going to pull in, let's say, Jacksonville and the submarkets here. And on my chart here, you'll see what we call a bunch of widgets. So these are just all metrics to help you become more acclimated to the performance of a market and also a forward-look performance of a market. So right now, I have Jacksonville as a metro, and maybe I want to go back in history to see, how did this market also perform through the last downturn, and how I want to see how RealPage thinks it's going to perform going out in the future, and look at that at a sub-market level to see where we think rents will be. So you can segment the information in any time series you want or geography, and then I can take a closer look at this chart here. So really, what am I looking at here? So right now, this would be the effective rent growth chart for the market, and then the submarkets down below. So what am I looking at? How fast have rents grown for the metro, the average for Jacksonville, and then down below here, how have they grown at a submarket level? And this is the submarket, and up here on my legend is the time range in which I'm looking. So it allows me to get more. Yep.
I have a question. How often is this data updated? The market data updated?
Yeah, so depending on the metric, it'll get updated at a different frequency. Typically monthly is the frequency of the rents getting updated.
And what about the market data in that, with everything changing right now. You know,
Like the
we could see
forecasts?
slow, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, forecasts will typically forecast out quarterly. We reforecasted in light of the pandemic because our forecast
Yeah.
in Q4 was slower growth but positive, and then now we think it's we did predict a recession. We just it ended up happening a little sooner than we had thought, and we think we'll pull out of it by next year. So you can see here, this right here is the forward-looking rent growth in the blue line here. So I can take a look and see and try and figure out, how long am I going to be weathering this storm of maybe slower rent growth, and what is the future forecasted rent growth past summer of 21 here as well with the forward look. So I can get a better understanding for that if I just wanted to see, especially, more current times, to see, that forward look, to see where maybe rents might grow faster within the Jacksonville Metro. I can change my dates up here and shorten my chart. So I'm going to scroll down here a bit now. So I can see, let's say, like, this is the time series and this is the forward look. So you can see it broken down by submarket here. I'll scroll to the right.
So you're
I'm just
seeing
looking
some
for,
decreases. That's
with
right.
the short
That's
term, you are going to
decreases.
see decreases. I'm looking for one that maybe would potentially outperform. You guys tell me, because I'm doing this live, maybe like Mandarin or
Central Jacksonville.
Central Jacksonville.
That's the
Yeah,
top
Central
one.
Jacksonville. I guess 5 years out will have the strongest. So a chart like this, anything I want to use, let's say to share, you can always export information. So this is where a data solution becomes a communication tool also. So if you're trying to convey this to potential investors and you want to show someone, you can show them a chart. You can also export this to Excel. So let's say we want to take a look at Central Jacksonville because by 2025, we think it'll have the strongest rent growth amongst the submarkets as an example. We'll kind of continue along with that when we come to a property search. Other things that we're also here and able to show you are really performance metrics that would typically be invisible if you're just looking at a brokerage package, meaning in a broker package, you're getting a rent roll and you're getting a rent survey, but you really don't know anything past that. You don't know maybe how expenses are working. You really don't know how the majority of that rent roll is going to change as far as renewals, because if you think about when leases trade hands, if you're buying a 50-unit building and you're looking at a rent survey, someone probably surveyed, maybe 5-8 units that happen to be available in that particular month that you surveyed it. So a very small view into a rent roll. What we're looking at now is how our renewal leases growing instead of just new leases, meaning renewal rent growth you see right now is actually outpacing new lease rent growth, meaning if Mr. Smith moves out of a building and Mrs. Jones moves in, they're actually, operators are getting more money for renewing those tenants at a higher rent growth level than actually someone moving out and someone moving in. So this is meant to give you more quick insight to trends, because I can even shorten this further. And let's say we want to look at this in light of a monthly basis in light of the pandemic, right? So let's say if I'm going to come out to 2020 and see between January and May, how some of these trends have also happened. I can see that trend as well. So I can definitely see, this is where, smooth sailing up until when things really started getting announced. And then obviously you can see the definite downward trend of overall rent growth levels. Although new lease rent growth is definitely outpacing, oops, I took off the wrong chart. New lease rent growth is now definitely outpacing renewal rent growth, because that's an asset strategy, right? After you buy that building, people are probably trying to maintain that revenue stream that they have and maybe slow down a rehab focus and renew those tenants in the short term at least, right? So they're their asset strategy is changing here, and it plays out in the data. So this is all based on transaction level information. So meaning RealPage is getting this from an aggregate of accounting level data that we know where rents are transacting in a given marketplace and submarket, and you're looking at the roll-up information of all that data. You guys have questions on this? I know it's probably different than how you would typically look at like anything really, broker package or tip information, but does that make sense, or do you understand kind of the value to it?
Very much so. This is excellent. And you guys, I've said this before, that what we've done in the past 10 years is not how we're going to move forward with data. So this is, like, as Mark has said, this information is coming from the folks that are, you know, their rent rolls. They're getting this data from the software that they have. So this is real-time information.
What are the, so the real-time information would be, what subset of properties are typically using your tool? I know, for example, Yardi, anything 80 units or below, same thing with CoStar, it's not really even on there.
Yeah, great question.
What demographics?
So, yeah, okay, that's a great question. Mm-hmm. So, really, as our information is most suitable for, we call it, you know, professionally owned and managed buildings, meaning it's probably, well, it is an aggregate of all sizes of buildings, really, but really buildings that are owned by or managed by a professional management company are typically the ones that do business with us on the other side. So if you go to like realpage.com, for example, and if you were to look at our website, you know, anybody that uses, let's see, one of our solutions, and there's many, a bunch of them you can see on the screen here. It could be creating data that goes back into those widgets on my other screen. Mm-hmm. So in general though, you know, for example, like myself, I invest in, you know, duplexes and fourplexes and, you know, smaller buildings, and I'd eventually like to do the larger buildings like, you know, everybody on the call. I use our screening tool. So I use OnSite, which is a screening tool to screen out residents, and that could be an aggregate of some information that rolls up into the dashboards. At the current time, I'm not big enough to, let's say, use our revenue management tool, which is our pricing tool, you know, that I mentioned earlier, and that's probably leveraged by typically 50 unit plus buildings that, you know, need a tool to make pricing easier. So to kind of more directly answer the question, I'd say, you know, we do have under 50 unit buildings within the platform that we track, but generally speaking, the data is much more dense on the 50 unit plus scale of what we track, because in the same token, you know, those are also the buildings, you know, 15 unit plus buildings get professionally managed and also leverage some of these other tools that are RealPage tools that aggregate and would roll up into a chart such as we're looking at.
Can you go over that one more time? I think at least I did,
sure,
miss the revenue, the rents. Can you show everybody how that works, how you guys get the information of that real data?
Yeah, so RealPage has tools. So this is our homepage, and you can see there's a number of different tools that we service for the multifamily industry. You know, if you think about property websites, you think about the ability to, you know, have a contact center where someone answers the phone so leads don't go missing. You know, there's a solution for everything. When Julianne just asked about is over on, where is it? It's asset management. It's actually called right here, revenue management. So revenue management is, it's an algorithmic based tool that helps price out multifamily units. So meaning if I have a 50 unit building, and how am I gonna use data to make sure that I have that price, that rent, when I go out and offer it to a potential resident, priced out at the optimal level. So if someone's gonna rent from me today and they can't move in for 2 weeks from now, there's a different price whether they can sign that lease today or they're going to sign in 2 weeks from now. Because if I have to leave it dark for 2 weeks and wait for that resident, I just lost out on 2 weeks potential rent. And that amount should be amortized over the amount of that lease so I can have the optimal rent figure. So it does all that type of math for the you know, for the person behind the leasing desk, so they can just give a price to someone and it will be optimal based on the specific supply and demand for an individual building. It also takes into consideration things like seasonality, meaning there's different times of year when someone is going to, you're going to get more traffic into a building, and leasing season is more common, and you might be able to push price a little bit more aggressively as a result of that seasonality. That seasonality might be different for a building in Jacksonville from a building in a different area, and the tool utilizes our comp data to and has that algorithm as well, or artificial intelligence, to make sure that price is optimized. Do you have, Drew,
Do you do reports on specific properties like CoStar or
Yep.
Yardi Matrix?
Yes,
So
absolutely.
before you jump into that, so I want to make sure everybody understands. So when you're leasing, people are trying to figure out what the rent is on that day, what the going rate is, you can open up your platform and see what rents are going for that day, that time. Is that correct? And base
It's
it on the
more,
information?
revenue management is like if you guys eventually subscribe to it, it's like a per unit per month tool that operates like in the background. And when someone comes in and wants to lease a space, they have their interface. And then when the person says, I want a 12-month lease and I can move in 2 weeks, it'll have a price for that. And then you can give them that price, and it's meant to make sure you're optimizing your revenue stream. Or let's say you have 5 renewals coming up next month. It tells you how to price those renewals accurately. So it's revenue management's a separate tool. What we're in now is market analytics. So it's more of a market data platform. So similar to a CoStar, similar to a Yardi Matrix. The big difference between a Yardi Matrix and a CoStar, to answer Patrick's question, is many of these metrics are not based on asking rent information. So if you think about what you would see from a CoStar, CoStar is aggregate, and I know because I used to work for CoStar and they have great data too, but it's different. So CoStar is aggregated data of survey information, meaning they have research people that are calling properties, or they're scanning apartments.com, and it's asking rent. Things like trade out, what are renewals actually happening at, is transaction information, meaning it's not a sticker price, it's what someone walked off the lot with that that actual lease at. So it's more accurate at a submarket level, and it's also a quicker insight into actual performance because it's hard data. So that's a big difference between what we're looking at on this particular tab versus a Yardi or a CoStar. The other big difference is, and this goes back to Patrick's question also, by the way, Yardi also has tools that throw off information. RollPage, when I come back to this side, because we have so many solutions, all of these solutions integrate with the main property management system tools in the industry. So Yardi is one of them. There's also ones called MRI, ResMan. There's a number, probably about 5 main property management system tools in the industry that dominate the industry. All of these tools on the screen here can integrate with those other property management system tools. So as a result of that, these widgets are based on the largest transaction data set in the marketplace, which is about 16 million units of transaction data that make up these charts here.
Wow.
So I don't want to spend too much on the macro side, because I think you guys probably care more on the property level data, but it is a nice way to be able to come in and see market and sub-market level metrics, even things like concessions, which are people are offering, let's say, half a month rent free and that type of thing to try and garner more interest. You can see information on concessions at a market and sub-market level. I once invested in a self-storage property and I wasn't aware of supply, because data on the self-storage side is not very transparent, but I still should have known that, of course. But one thing that's true on the multifamily side through a tool like this is you can very accurately have a pulse on what new supply might be coming into a marketplace. So a chart like this at a market level will also give you an idea for, let's say we do buy a building in central Jacksonville, are they going to be building a lot of apartments in that submarket coming forward? And am I going to have to compete with that supply if I buy a deal there? So you can have a nice breakout of where that new supply might be coming, so that when you actually buy an asset in a given area, you're aware of how you might have to handle repositioning of it. So I'll come into a property level search here instead, and this is where we can do our property level research, which is probably what you guys would spend more time in. And we'll go into Central Jacksonville, unless you want me to go into something different.
That's good.
So probably like you saw with the RD, you can put in a market, submarket, or property in here. And when I come in here, it'll zoom me into the specific area. So one thing to notate differently also, RealPage doesn't track the other property types. Probably should have mentioned that at the beginning. We're specifically focused on multifamily. So we don't track office, retail, other property types like that. We are a purist on the multifamily space, and our goal is just to provide the most accurate and complete data set on multifamily, conventional multifamily in particular. We don't track senior, or we're not really in the business of the affordable side either. So this is the Jacksonville market. You can see on the bottom side here, there's a little legend. So we try and make it easy to understand and get a visual for the different stage and phase of the buildings in a given marketplace. So how many are under construction and lease up? How many buildings are actively planned in the Jacksonville market? How many are currently under construction? How many are in active lease up? And how many are stabilized? So I'll dig into a couple of these and we can take a look. Let's see, like a planned building. So planned buildings are relevant because they keep you up to date on what other buildings might be popping up in a submarket that you might be looking at, and might go up across the street from a building you might eventually buy. So one thing we do is we make really frequent notes of what's going on with this potential development project. And you can see the history as I go down here. So we actually have a group of phone-based researchers that are calling building departments, seeing if there's been permits pulled, calling the developer, and updating over time what's going on with this planned project. So you know about when they're going to start the leasing, when they're going to start moving people in, et cetera, who the developer is that's working on it. So you're not surprised with anything.
Mark, on these other asset or these other properties, are they listed in asset classes so that we can tell what level of property type it is? Okay.
Yeah, so if it's in one of the black dots, which is not stabilized yet, it won't have a grading until it actually exists. But for a stabilized building, yes, there's definitely a grading for a building. So let's come up to a stabilized building. I'll show you what I mean.
And will it tell us if it's a B, C quality asset?
Yes.
Okay.
So if you notice when I hover over something, it'll pop up a little tile and let's go into an existing building. So we do grade assets a little differently than CoStar and Yardi. And we'll have asset grades over here. So what am I looking at for the Strand in particular? So this is a A+ asset in the market, meaning this is an A+ asset within the metro. The asset grade within the submarket is also A+. So this is like top of the submarket, top of the metro. The submarket itself is a B- submarket. So it's, it's in below average submarket, but this is the top performer within this submarket. So we're getting a little barometer here for this particular asset's positioning within the submarket, the asset's positioning within metro, and then also the submarket kind of performance in comparison to the metro. So a little benchmarking, so to speak, to see how this one is performing. I might look at this if I were putting on my investor lens to look for maybe A submarkets with B or C asset grades in the submarket type of thing, right? You want to look for the underperforming assets within the submarket. Coming down here, you'll see the more granular information, so the property profile, so to speak. Within each property profile, you'll definitely have what we call as our demographic reports. So everything is downloadable. So if I pull this up here, I can have a demographic report to obviously, get myself more familiar with who's living around here, what's the age breakout, what's the employment base. If I'm going to market to people out here to come and live at this community, who would I market to, and what's my potential residence base look like? So this is a pretty in-depth, I'll blow it up so it's easier to see. So the strand is the subject property. This is the lat and longitude of the subject property. And here some nice demographic information about, who lives around here. What's the age range? Who's my audience of potential clients that are going to be living in my building? I can see that. Household income, income range, age range breakout. And I think this one's usually interesting too. So things like, what's the housing stock between, let's say, one unit, single family homes versus multi-unit, and housing value you're built. Also further breakouts of things like age, employment base by sector, and educational attainment, travel time to work. So obviously, a lot of information. If I were going to use this, I might package it in as a component to your package to your investors, just to get people more comfortable with an area, because they may not be familiar with central Jacksonville if they're living out of state. In addition to that, it will also have a property level report. So a property level report is more of a asset level report. So I can see, okay, I got that brokerage package from the Strand, and they had some rents in there and some rent comps. I want to see, how do the rents look like from an outside perspective, outside of what that broker just sent me. So I can see here a nice granular look at a floor plan level breakout of the different floor plans for a building. So this would be the asking rents. And if they were offering concession, we'd back that out and give you an effective rent. So granular information about the property. So if I were going to go and maybe do some work on this property outside of our platform, we make it really easy to get the data out too. So I can just click on here, and then my spreadsheet would be in Excel, and then maybe I can do some underwriting on my own and do my homework outside of the platform. So we make it pretty easy to do that. There's also a trends tab. So the trends tab is meant to give you better insight into, how's this property doing in comparison to the submarket and the market. Give you a little forward look as well at the asset level to say, how might it perform in the future. So this would be the subject property of the Strand again, submarket and market, and we'll have some metrics here. So asking rent change. So how has asking rent change trended over this time period here? I'm going to scroll to the right here and down, so I can see also, how do we expect it to perform in comparison to the submarket market if I were to go forward as well.
So Mark, let's go for another 3 minutes, and then we'll open it up for discussion, and give us the download about what the costs are and what that looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple other things you can do within the platform. Let me pick another one. So this one's not lit up. So if a building has been stabilized for over a year, you can also do what's called a asset snapshot. An asset snapshot is like a little pre-underwrite, meaning, let's see if I can do it on this one. I'll skip that one. Asset snapshot's just like a push button report, but it pulls in sales comps and lease comps. So it's just a quick one-stop shop report. I think it also see you guys leveraging what we call our apartment market reports. So these are put out quarterly, and they're put out at a market level, and they have sub-market level information as well. So a lot of people will package this in with what they're doing just to have some commentary by a third-party data source on the market. So this is the type of stuff that Greg Willett on Thursday will talk about in terms of, he's the one actually writing these types of inputs right here. So this will give you some big picture information on an overview on the market, our outlook, snapshot on how a market might be performing, and a forecast. So a macro market report that will update quarterly, and then I can also come into different sub-market views as well and see breakouts. So this would be available for any market that someone has a subscription for, and they can pull it quarterly to get more of the big picture market and sub-market level outlook of an area, and also a written commentary about all the different factors to consider, things like economy, demographic, supply, demand, etc. Couple other things. So let's say a lot of times when people are buying a property in an area, they want to do a rent survey. So pretty easy to do those. I can come in here and copy a name of a property and run what we call a CPS report, which is a competitive pricing survey. I can either do it on a subject property, or if I'm just researching an area or street, I can do it on a non-subject. And within here, we make it really easy to just come in and quickly run a rent survey on a specific building we might be underwriting. So that's my subject property here. I think this was a Class C asset, so maybe I want to pull in Class C and Class B buildings and say a 2-mile radius. So you can pick how far of a radius you want to go. I can pick how many units I want to compare myself against or year built. You can kind of play with how wide of a net you want to cast when you are searching, and come back with properties. So obviously I don't want to compare myself against too many properties, so I might maybe narrow that down to a 1-mile radius, let's say, and I'll probably come back with a smaller data set. So about 7, that's an ample data set. And now I can run my rent survey.
Mm-hmm.
So this is meant to save time, obviously, because it takes you a couple minutes versus having to put out a ton of calls, and also give you more granular information than you would typically have access to yourself. So now for my subject building and all the competition, I can see, how do the studio apartment units rent out at for my building versus the competitive ones around it? And how do the 2 bedrooms, it doesn't have, these are the 2 bedrooms here for the subject building against the ones around it, if it has a 2-bedroom. So really easy to compare yourself against the other properties, really easy to get
saves
different
so much
views.
time, Mark.
Yep, it's really meant to save time.
Yeah.
Because when I was in brokerage, and maybe the Marcus Millichap guys will tell you guys this on Thursday, there's $1,000, I still remember it to this day, there's $1,000 an hour work, and there's $12 an hour work, right?
Exactly.
And market research is not the area where you want to spend most of your time. You want to have, just spend some of your time on it regardless, but really you want to spend most of your time speaking with clients, searching for deals, and making decisions versus gathering it. And that's what this does. So you can also save time. Sure, go ahead.
Can you bring us through? I like to stop at 6, so
yeah,
a couple minutes off. So tell us a little bit about what the costs are so people can understand. You were saying 50 units and above really captures that kind of data. Mm-hmm. So tell us a little bit about that. Is it market? It's by market?
Yeah, so subscription is based by market. And it's licensed to the company. So an organization gets access, and then the users can use it. And your pricing is based on the size of the organization. So how many users, a little bit, but primarily based on the geography. So one market, you can have access to one market. It's an annual subscription. Multiple markets brings down the cost. So if you have national data, obviously it's lower price per market than one market. One market pricing can be ranged from about 5,000 annual to 7,500 per market. National is about 65,000 for national access for all US, all markets. What it includes is training. If let's say you're a company and you have an assistant, you and your assistant or a couple others can have access as well. So you get more than one user. So training is included. You can access it on multiple devices. It's browser agnostic, so you can log into it on your computer or work computer, and you won't not gonna have any issues. All of the information is pretty much downloadable too. So I can, if you still see my screen here, that report that I was just in, I can, within a couple of clicks, get a report like this, all in Excel, pre-formatted. So I don't have to spend time, trying to skim a PDF file, and it's in Excel and I can go do my work. So this part's like really unique to our data platform as well. We make it really easy to get the data out in usable form so that you can underwrite faster. So that's the general pricing range. And yeah, I know that we probably tried to cover a lot and got a little sidetracked with my internet problems, but that's our data platform in a nutshell.
Well, we just so appreciate you being here. Does anybody have any questions? I mean, lots and lots of information that Mark has provided for us. Anybody have any questions before we say goodbye?
I got a question. So this is Ray Reyes here out of Florida as well. Quick question.
Great.
Do you have any way to identify properties that may be up for sale?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, no, yeah, it sounds crazy, right? But RealPage doesn't track the for sale marketplace. So I think your tools right now are your brokers are going to be your #1 tool, LoopNet, CoStar, which I'm familiar with also. Obviously track the for sale market, RCM, for sale market on the institutional space. But RealPage for some reason doesn't. I don't know why. I'd say our data set is a pure play data set of accurate and granular information for the investment grade space. So if, I wouldn't point you to our data if you're looking to subscribe for a prospecting tool, because we don't really have, we're not really in the space of tracking owners behind LLCs and phone numbers in that sense, where a broker might be looking for opportunities to get a listing agreement, or if you guys are actively trying to maybe call yourselves and prospect that way to dig up a deal. It's not really the strength of our platform. People that I work with are using our platform. A lot of times they'll have CoStar and us, by the way, and they have us because of the accuracy of our information, because we have more complete and accurate multifamily data than our competition. And we also make it easier to get out of our platform in usable format. So if you're in, let's say, a CoStar, typically it's a little cumbersome to take out data in quantity because it's protected and capped out. The other big differentiating point between us and, let's say, like a Yardi or CoStar is our forecasts are definitely known within the industry, and you'll speak to our expert on that, Greg Willett, on Thursday. Our forecasts are the most accurate in the industry, so it gives you a better forward-looking perspective of a market. But I wouldn't use our data for tracking for sale, unfortunately, and the prospecting side, but more just general pure decision-making data to base your investment decision on.
One last question before we wrap up. Is there any like a la carte or ad hoc where you can turn it on and off on this data, and any options like that? Mark? Uh-oh. We lost him again. He's frozen. All right, well, at this point, I guess we'll just say thank you so much, you guys. I appreciate you guys showing up, as always, trying to add value. If there's something that you need, that you'd like to learn more about, please reach out to me. I'm happy to discover new opportunities for everybody. Be safe out there. How does that go? Be safe and sanitize. Be safe and sanitize. That comes from Nate. And we'll see you next week, you guys. But remember, look at Thursday's webinar. It's going to be excellent. RealPage, CoStar, and John Griggs. That is, amazing. Started out just like you guys. All right. So have a good week. If I don't see you,
Thanks,
have a great
Julie.
one.
Bye.
Thanks, Julie.
You
Bye-bye,
bet.
Julie.
Take care.
Thanks.